Hey, welcome back, all you Adam heads. This is Adam Sam Radio. We are going to use the realistic shortwave 100 again. See what we got.
Why? They are in a full court press through the January 6th committee to totally destroy Donald Trump, to prevent him from having any hope of running for president again, because they know he is radically opposed to their agenda. That's why they hate him. That's why they hate him.
Para ser honesto, a Rússia teria que ser totalmente humano. Como nosso amigo, comunicador, né? Muito obrigado, meu xará, José Muniz, aqui o José Maurício, né? Muito obrigado, José Muniz, pelas suas palavras. Eu agradeço todo dia o nosso criador, o nosso...
Cultural activities until further notice. This in a gesture of solidarity with the people of Matanzas in the wake of the fire at the oil tank farm there. Fondo Cubano de Bienes Culturales, one of the organizers, reported on its website that the decision is a tribute to all those affected by the disaster, especially the firefighter who was killed and the other 14 who are still missing and their relatives. Organizers of Arte en la Rampa include also the Ministry of Culture, the Hermanos Seis Association of Young Artists, and the record and musical editions company, The Grim. The current edition of Arte en la Rampa began on July 22nd and runs through September 4th at its traditional venue, Pabellon Cuba Cultural Complex. It is this time dedicated to the 50th anniversary of the New Trova movement. Also, Fábrica de Arte Cubano announced the cancellation of all cultural activities this weekend in solidarity with residents of Matanzas and with those who are still battling to extinguish the fire caused by lightning at the oil tank farm in the industrial zone of Matanzas. The creative team of the emblematic cultural sector issued a communique expressing their solidarity with those wounded and the families of those who are still missing.
Moves. Inflation. 7.7% gasoline prices, which have continued to fall so far this month. Other sources of relief included airfare down 7.8% in July, and rental car prices down 9.5%. Relatively benign July CPI numbers align with other recent data that suggest inflation could be starting to turn. Looking at falling prices for a wide range of commodities, the New York Fed survey of
no tenían la menor idea de quiénes éramos nosotros.
El origen del peso en esta región tiene lo que se conoce como una implicación
Ojalá que esto te ayude.
Tenemos un correo electrónico, una pregunta. Adelante.
That preach from Psalm 9.
Very quiet.
time for some of our news headlines. Let's go to the news desk for the news bulletin.
Cuban president Luis Canel visited twice of the affected areas of the Matanzas supertanker base, where he had stretched with the specialized teams from Mexico and Venezuela. On Twitter, the president's office indicated that these Canel arrived at the site where the wire pump set up by the Venezuelans is located, and expressed his gratitude to those workers for their solidarity with the Cuban people.
De ejemplo social. Es decir, intentas hacer.
After the residents near the supertanker base. Likewise, after the meeting to check on the incident, he went to the Antonio Guterres thermoelectric power plant, accompanied by Prime Minister Manuel Cruz, the Secretary of the Organization of the Communist Party, Roberto Morales Ojeda, and the Deputy Prime Minister and Commander of the Revolution, Ramiro Valdez Menendez. Cuba began the evaluation of the damages after the fire of significant proportions that occurred at the supertanker base in the city of Matanzas. After that analysis, recovery planning will begin, even Prime Minister Manuel Cruz said on Twitter. In that social media network, he clarified that at this moment, the water spill continues by land and air to cool the surface and to be able to start the search for the missing people. In another publication, he argued that there is a total control and protection of this contamination without danger to people. He added that the fire had been controlled and work is underway to
Part in the creation of components of biological weapons, unquote, though he did not name any of them. All he would say is that they are, quote, the heads of divisions and employees of the U.S. Department of Defense, as well as its main subcontractors, unquote. These bioweapons campaigns, Konashenkov went on to say, are, quote, directly related to the son of the current U.S. President, Hunter Biden, unquote. This claim corroborates with revelations that came forward last week about how the Biden crime family has connections to the Pentagon contractor Metabiota, which specializes in investigating potential pandemic-causing pathogens that could be used as bioweapons. We know from the recent admissions of the U.S. diplomat Victoria Nuland, who testified before the Senate earlier this month, that the Ukrainian biolabs do in fact exist and are not just a conspiracy theory. She told Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, however, upon him prompting her to say such, that if anything goes wrong at the labs, it is automatically Russia's fault. Quote, this is not a war against the Ukrainian people, but it's rather Putin's dismantling in a hostile manner of the deep state's toy factory, aka the nation of Ukraine, suggested someone at Great Game India about the situation. Quote, this explains all the rage of State Department, the CIA, and deep state politicians.
Who gives a shit?
Cuando vuelvan a enfrentarse estos equipos.
coercive mentors in false for Trump and still in force.
El movimiento San Isidro.
A little bit more about the car. Увидите оплачивать более легкую, like songs about Susanna, because there are so many and they're so wonderful, and most of them are really nice. But my favorite is Karel Kriel and his song for Susanna, which is absolutely unlike Karel Kriel. He sounds very different than in any other song. He sounds, so to say, very happy. More happy than in his war songs. But if I am asked to play a song for Susanna, then I the art company and Susanna, and I sing along.
The consequences of an election
A los beneficios también de cada país y cómo allí también
generate
distinta desde lo espiritual, desde cómo se toma.
The Cuba Petroleum Company and the Institute of Hydraulic Resources, together with Mexican and Venezuelan specialists, are working intensely to extinguish the fire. According
Station went out.
this, demand an urgent and meaningful response from the neighboring countries. Now is the time to put politics aside and prioritize humanitarian engagement, environmental protection, and regional cooperation, they emphasized. The parliamentarians called on the Democratic administration to immediately offer appropriate assistance to facilitate international response efforts to the fire burning the supertanker base in Matanzas, about 100 kilometers east of Havana. They also urged to suspend any relevant
de policía en la capital.
Esta es la voz de Turquía. Esta es la voz de Turquía.
Se quiser comprar e pendurar, vai lá.
At the tone, 2 hours, 58 minutes. Coordinated Universal Time.
Try to take charge, complete charge. Receive it in the name of the Son of God. Receive it in the name of Jesus.
Lo cultural, desde lo político. Y ese trabajo polifónico es lo que no solo nos libera del régimen, sino que construye una Cuba por venir.
Habla a Mauri Pacheco, vicecoordinador del movimiento San Isidro.
La censura se ha virado al revés. La gente que habla bien de la revolución en alguna parada, en cualquier lugar, cada día es menos. Casi todo el mundo está.
Cuban President Miguel-Canel visited once the affected areas of the Matanzas supertanker base, where he exchanged with the specialized teams from Mexico and Venezuela. On Twitter, the president's office indicated that Canel arrived at the site where the water pump set up by the Venezuelans is located, and expressed his gratitude to those workers for their solidarity with the Cuban people. As part of the tour, His canal visited the University of Matanzas, which in these days has functioned as an evacuation center for residents near the supertanker base. Likewise, after the meeting to check on the incident, he went to the Antonio Guterres thermoelectric power plant, accompanied by Prime Minister Mohamed Cruz, the Secretary of the Organization of the Communist Party, Roberto Morales Ojeda, and the Deputy Prime Minister and Commander of the Revolution, Ramiro Valdez Menendez. Cuba began the evaluation of the damages after the fire of significant proportions that occurred at the supertanker base in the city of Matanzas. After that analysis, recovery planning will begin, Cuban Prime Minister Manuel Cruz said on Twitter. In that social media network, he clarified that at this moment, the work still continues by land and air to cool the surface and to be able to start a search for the missing people. In another publication, he argued that there is a total control on the production of the smoke emission without danger to people. He added that the fire had been controlled and work is underway to extinguish small outbreaks.
El Ministerio de Economía y el Consejo de Agricultura han informado hoy en el Consejo de Ministros de los jueves sobre los productos taiwaneses que han sido objeto de sanciones por parte de China continental tras la visita de Nancy Pelosi a la isla. Cítricos, pescados congelados o ciertos alimentos procesados no pueden ahora exportarse a China continental. El primer ministro Su Tseng ha dicho que las sanciones chinas han provocado una crisis en el comercio internacional y ha asegurado que el gobierno taiwanés solo tiene una opción: ayudar a las industrias y empresas afectadas por las sanciones a minimizar las pérdidas. Su ha pedido a todos los ministerios que elaboren medidas de subsidio y eventos promocionales. Con respecto a los productos agropecuarios, el primer ministro ha dicho que el gobierno ha venido desde hace años
y perdóname que te rectifique, perdóname. No es
Nos dicen con prioridad expresadas por la primera dama.
Financial institutions by Cuba named for food and medicine, noted the letter published on the Let Cuba Live platform. Signing personalities asked Washington to lift all sanctions that prevent Cuba from receiving, directly or indirectly, medical, humanitarian, environmental, or financial aid, as well as that this includes removing Cuba from the list of states sponsored by terrorism. So far, almost 30 personalities have signed documents in solidarity with the Caribbean nation. First have suffered since August 5th the consequences of electrical discharge that hit an oil deposit, which provoked a fire of great proportions. Combined forces of the Ministry of the Interior, the Revolutionary Armed Forces, the Cuba Petroleum Company, and the Institute of Hydraulic Resources, together with Mexican and Venezuelan specialists, are working intensely to extinguish the fire. According to the authorities, the Cuban government has not refused any help to fight the flames, and the candidate campaign located at the do not. U.S. House of Representatives Jim McGovern recommends on Thursday first President Joe Biden to put politics aside, lift the blockade, and help Cuba after the devastation.
fallecimiento de otro.
Com toda a sua beleza e fragilidade, as
Adesso non facendo con lexico italiano, lo facciamo selling the state.
Muchísimas gracias, Yolanda. Inmediato con el detalle de una sesión de presos políticos y asesinados humanos de Tampa.
Que algo esté mal. Tierra abajo de la alfombra. Eso puede suceder cuando una persona está tan abrumada por una situación que no sabe qué hacer.
Patriótico en el que
Un sanatorio mai mare, sir.
su querido amigo Sánchez. Canciones patrióticas a los presentes. A la actividad acudieron.
If we don't keep God's commandments, that we're going to go, so we will. And one thing that God
Momento, pero bueno, vamos a pasar a...
Homenagem à plantinha de São Francisco. A celebración mate a Alaba en el minuto 37. En el segundo tiempo el Real Madrid hizo la diferencia. What is your job? What happens if your child gets very seriously ill? What happens? You lose your job. You find out that your child has cancer now and needs to be treated. What do? The bank account? Not looking good. That $20,000 that you could have used to help pay your child's medical bills instead went to that new car that replaced the old one that was only 3 months old. That's where the real problems lie. Having a competitive spirit is not a bad thing. Having one to excess, though, which causes you to live outside of your means, the money runs out. Some people don't realize that. You might have $10 million in the bank now. Just keep an eye on it. Sometimes it'll control you and it'll get the best of you and it'll be gone before your very eyes. Well, that was a little bit of a moral talk from the good old lecturer here. VORW Radio International, of course, though, is a light entertainment program featuring not only talk and commentary, but what did I also say? Music, that's right. We got some music here on VORW Radio International coming up.
Nueve, 12 minutos, continuamos en Deportiva 4-1 de la
statement. The Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution.
Burning with brimstone, and when we compare that language with language of 2 Peter
como era en el principio, ahora y siempre, por los siglos de los siglos. Amén.
Personas de las que no se puede certificar todavía de manera oficial.
Federal launched the civil investigation in 2019 after Trump's former personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, testified in Congress that the ex-president exaggerated his assets, quote, when it served his purposes. James said in court filings that her office had uncovered significant evidence that Trump's company, quote, used fraudulent or misleading asset valuations to obtain a host of economic benefits, including loans, insurance coverage, and tax deductions. Donald Trump, who previously suggested that he would run for president again in 2024, has dismissed the New York inquiry, the federal probe, and the congressional committee investigating the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol by his supporters, all as politically motivated. On Wednesday, he reiterated that he had done nothing wrong, stressing without evidence that federal authorities, state prosecutors, and what he called fake news media are targeting him with unfounded accusations. Chinese Foreign Affairs Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin said on Wednesday that due to U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, quote, China has suspended China-U.S. talks on climate change and all the consequences should be borne by the United States. The countermeasures taken by China are justified in a reasonable response to Pelosi's provocative visit to Taiwan, Wang added. That China has repeatedly made clear to the United States that the One China principle is the political foundation for China to develop bilateral relations with other countries. He said in this regard...
Na mesma idade de Stein, que nasceu 2 anos antes. Sucedido y que se va a demostrar.
Antitipo. Así es, así como todos los corderos sacrificados.
Carbón. Los apagones han enardecido los ánimos de los...
Să merg la Sfânta Liturghie. Prima dată am mers la Biserica Sfântă Paraschiva din Torino. Tot mereu eram cu gândul acasă, mă gândeam că o să scap de datorile care le aveam și apoi să mă întorc la cei dragi.
That are the starting point for the
La intención, y ustedes me sabrán corregir si no es así. Va a pedir, pero el 9 de agosto es muy emocionante celebrar los 80 años.
Desarrolló rápidamente. Los expertos decidieron que...
A fim de viver como irmãos e irmãs em nossa casa comum. E a violência contra a vida consagrada no continente africano não dá trégua. Na noite entre 6 e 7 de agosto foi assassinado a tiros por bandidos armados que atacaram a igreja São José Mukasa.
This day is the denunciation that it will be filed in the Federal Public Prosecutor's Office, the MPF of the whole country, that has denounced the President of the National Indian Foundation, or FUNAI, Marcelo Xavier, for the commission of the crime of administrative improbity. The petition filed by APIB and other organizations also punctuates the sequence of violations against indigenous peoples carried out by President Jair Bolsonaro since his election in 2018. An example of this was the withdrawal of the attribution of demarcation of indigenous lands to FUNAI and the transfer to the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Supply, as well as the failure to declare or approve any indigenous land in the period from 2019 to August 2022. In particular, the demonstrations are aimed at denouncing the concept
stop violence and the violation of rights suffered by native communities. A British Museum in London afirma que agiliza ayuda in Nigeria. The Holy Man Museum has announced that it was obvious that the ancient artifacts had been acquired through forced colonial British soldiers. The museum said in the quote, ownership of 72 objects which
9:16 p.m. Here in eastern United States, Hal Turner back with you. So, Attorney General Merrick Garland gave a press briefing at the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. today. And I want to play for you very briefly one snippet of what the Attorney General of the United States of America said. And it would help if I unmuted the audio. Alright, so why is this not playing? That's all.
Because you don't know what you're doing.